There's a hidden wisdom that walks with those God has set apart. Scripture shows us again and again that divine selection does not always come with loud announcements or public explanations. Often, God's deepest work in a person's life happens in silence, in secrecy, and in seasons where only heaven understands what is taking place. What you carry is holy, and not everything holy is meant to be exposed to every ear. Being chosen does not mean being loud. It means being guarded. Joseph learned this early when he spoke too soon about his dreams. David learned it while hiding in caves before the crown ever touched his head. Jesus himself moved quietly at times, withdrawing from crowds, refusing to reveal everything before its appointed hour. This is because revelation before preparation can destroy destiny. If you truly sense God's hand on your life, there are certain things you must protect, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. These are not secrets of pride, but sacred matters that require maturity, timing, and discernment. The enemy does not need full access to your life, and not everyone around you is assigned to understand your journey. Here are 5 things God's chosen ones should never casually reveal to anyone. Clear signs that you are walking under divine assignment. Your future vision and the dreams God places in your spirit are not ordinary thoughts. They are sacred deposits from heaven. When God reveals a glimpse of what He intends to do through you, He's inviting you into partnership with His timing, not asking you to broadcast it immediately. Many divine visions are meant to first deepen your prayer life, stretch your faith, and shape your character before they ever become public reality. What God shows you is often bigger than your current capacity, and silence allows that capacity to grow without pressure. In the early stages, a God-given dream is vulnerable. Just like a seed planted in the ground, it must be covered before it can grow. When shared too soon, the dream can be exposed to doubt, ridicule, or misunderstanding from people who do not have the faith or spiritual maturity to steward it. Their words may seem harmless, but repeated skepticism can slowly erode confidence and cause you to question what God clearly spoke. Protecting the vision is an act of faith, not fear. There is also a spiritual dimension to guarding your future. Scripture shows that opposition often rises against purpose before it fully manifests. When you reveal your vision prematurely, you may unintentionally invite resistance that you are not yet equipped to confront. God, in His wisdom, often allows the dream to mature in secrecy so that when opposition comes, you are rooted, strengthened, and unmovable. Silence becomes a shield that keeps the enemy guessing while God is preparing you. Another reason God asks His chosen ones to be quiet about their dreams is because vision requires process. What He shows you is the destination, not the entire journey. People who hear only the destination may not understand the delays, the detours, or the discipline required along the way. Their impatience can pressure you to rush God's timing or take shortcuts that compromise the very purpose He revealed. Keeping the vision between you and God allows Him to lead you step by step without outside interference. When the time is right, God does not need your explanation to validate the dream. He reveals it through fulfillment. What was once hidden becomes evident through fruit, transformation, and undeniable results. Those who once doubted will recognize that it was God all along. Until that moment arrives, wisdom teaches you to treasure the vision quietly, nurture it in prayer, and trust that the same God who revealed it will also bring it to pass in His perfect time. Your spiritual battles and weak moments are deeply personal places where God is shaping you, strengthening you, and teaching you dependence on Him. These seasons are not signs of failure, they are evidence of growth and spiritual warfare. When God is doing a refining work in you, not everyone is qualified to hear the details of that process. Some people lack the discernment to separate struggle from identity, and instead of seeing God's hand at work, they may mislabel your season and misunderstand your calling. Revealing your battles to the wrong people can turn a moment of vulnerability into a source of harm. What you share in trust can be repeated without care, used for gossip, or even thrown back at you during moments of conflict. Instead of intercession, you may receive judgment. Instead of encouragement, you may encounter doubt. Chosen ones learn that openness without discernment can expose wounds before they have healed. making recovery more difficult than it needs to be. There's also a spiritual cost to oversharing your weaknesses. Some battles are meant to be fought privately with God, where intimacy is formed and strength is built in secret. When every struggle is publicly announced, it can shift your focus from God's power to people's opinions, rather than standing firm in faith. You may find yourself constantly explaining, defending, or justifying your process, which drains spiritual energy and delays restoration. This does not mean chosen ones are called to isolation. God provides specific people, mentors, spiritual leaders, and trusted companions who are safe places for confession, counsel, and prayer. Discernment is knowing who has the spiritual maturity to cover you, not expose you. A safe listener will respond with prayer, wisdom, and hope, not curiosity or condemnation, choosing wisely who each. Here's your story is an act of stewardship, not secrecy. As God brings you through battles, your testimony gains power, but only when shared at the right time. Some stories are not meant to be told while you are still bleeding, but after healing has taken place. In time, what once felt like weakness becomes evidence of God's faithfulness. Until then, guarding your battles allows God to finish His work without interruption, so that when you speak, your words bring life, strength, and glory to Him alone. Your next move or strategy is often revealed to you quietly because God values timing as much as obedience. When He's preparing to shift you into a new season, He does not always announce it with noise or public confirmation. Many divine instructions come as gentle nudges, inner convictions, or repeated confirmations in prayer. These moments are sacred, and speaking too quickly about them can interrupt the careful alignment God is orchestrating behind the scenes. Silence protects clarity. When you begin to share your plans prematurely, outside opinions can cloud what God has made clear. People may offer advice based on their own fears, experiences, or limitations, not on God's direction for your life. What started as a firm instruction can slowly turn into confusion as voices multiply. Guarding your next move allows you to remain anchored in God's voice without unnecessary interference. There is also a strategic reason for secrecy. Scripture repeatedly shows that God often moves His servants discreetly before major breakthroughs. If every step is announced, opposition can form before the foundation is secure. Envy, resistance, and spiritual attack frequently target what is spoken, but not yet established. Keeping your strategy between you and God allows the groundwork to be laid before resistance has time to organize. Another danger of revealing your next move too early. The pressure it creates to perform. Once people know your plans, expectations begin to grow, and you may feel rushed to produce results to maintain credibility. This pressure can push you ahead of God's timing, causing you to act in haste rather than obedience. God's strategy unfolds best when you move at His pace, not according to human deadlines or public scrutiny. Your next move often involves growth that others cannot yet see. God may be stretching your faith, sharpening your skills, or pruning relationships in preparation for what is coming. If you reveal the destination without understanding the process, people may question the steps you take along the way. Silence gives God room to shape you without constant explanation or defense of your obedience. Chosen ones also understand that God sometimes tests faith through quiet obedience. Acting without applause or validation strengthens trust and humility. When you move silently with God, your confidence becomes rooted in His approval rather than human affirmation. This builds spiritual maturity and prepares you to steward greater responsibility when the season of visibility arrives. When God is ready to reveal your strategy, He will do so through undeniable progress and open doors. Results will speak louder than plans ever could. Until that moment, wisdom calls you to guard your next move. Pray consistently and obey faithfully. What is birthed in silence is often sustained with strength, and what God establishes quietly, no one can easily overthrow. Your level of spiritual insight or authority is not something you announce. It is something that is recognized over time. God grants discernment and authority as a stewardship, not as a badge of superiority. When He opens your spiritual eyes, He is trusting you with understanding that can influence, correct, or even confront spiritual realities. Such insight carries weight, and weight requires restraint. Speaking everything you discern without wisdom can overwhelm others and expose you to unnecessary conflict. Spiritual insight grows in intimacy with God, often in private seasons of prayer, fasting, and obedience. These are hidden places where God sharpens perception and deepens understanding. When insight is shared prematurely or carelessly, it can cheapen what was formed through sacrifice. God often teaches His chosen ones to value silence so that revelation is not treated as common knowledge, but as holy trust. Revealing too much spiritual authority can also provoke resistance. Not everyone is ready to receive truth, and not every environment is safe for spiritual confrontation. Even Jesus withheld certain teachings, saying people were not yet able to bear them. When insight is exposed without discernment, it can create division, offense, or hostility rather than transformation. Wisdom knows when to speak and when to wait. There is also the danger of pride when spiritual authority is openly displayed. Publicly emphasizing insight can subtly shift the heart from humility to self-awareness. God resists pride, even spiritual pride, and authority that is not clothed in humility becomes vulnerable to correction. Chosen ones learn to let God exalt them, rather than trying to prove how much they know or see. Another reason to guard your spiritual authority is that discernment attracts attention in the spiritual realm. Authority that is broadcast without covering can invite spiritual attack. God often keeps His servants hidden while He strengthens them, ensuring their foundation is firm before they are placed in visible positions. Silence becomes a form of spiritual protection during seasons of growth. True spiritual authority does not need constant explanation. It manifests through peace, consistency, wisdom, and fruit. People sense it through your presence, your words at the right moment, and your ability to bring clarity without force. When authority is genuine, it is felt rather than advertised, and respect follows naturally. God also tests faithfulness with insight before expanding influence. How you handle what He reveals in private determines what He entrusts to you publicly. If you can keep revelation sacred, He knows you can be trusted with greater responsibility. If you expose everything for validation, you limit what God can safely place in your hands. In time, God Himself makes your authority evident. Doors open, lives are impacted, and your words carry weight because heaven stands behind them. Until that moment, wisdom calls you to walk quietly, listen deeply, and speak sparingly. Spiritual authority matures best in humility, and insight guarded in silence often becomes power released at exactly the right time. Your acts of sacrifice and obedience to God are among the most sacred parts of your walk with Him. These are not casual decisions. They are moments where you choose God over comfort, obedience over convenience, and faith over visible reward. Many of these sacrifices are costly, misunderstood, and deeply personal. Because of their sacred nature, God often calls His chosen ones to keep these acts hidden, allowing heaven, not people, to be the primary witness. Sacrifice loses its purity when it is constantly explained or displayed. The moment obedience becomes a performance, its spiritual power begins to diminish. God is not impressed by what is loud. He is moved by what is sincere. When you obey Him quietly, without seeking recognition, it reveals trust in His character rather than dependence on human validation. This kind of obedience pleases God deeply because it flows from love, not ego. There are sacrifices you make that others could never understand because they were never given. Your instruction. God deals with His chosen ones personally, often requiring things from them that He does not require from others. Explaining these sacrifices can invite unnecessary judgment, confusion, or criticism from people who lack the context of your calling. Silence protects you from defending obedience that God never asked you to justify. Many acts of obedience involve saying no to relationships, opportunities, habits, or paths that look good on the surface but are misaligned with God's purpose. From the outside, these choices can appear foolish or extreme. Sharing them openly can invite pressure to compromise or reconsider what God has already made clear. Guarding these decisions helps you remain firm when obedience is costly. There's also a timing element to sacrifice. What God asks you to give up today may not make sense until later seasons reveal why it was necessary. If you explain your obedience too early, people may plant seeds of doubt that cause you to question God's wisdom. Silence allows trust to deepen while God works out the results beyond what you can see. Jesus taught that what is done in secret is rewarded openly, and this principle remains powerful. When sacrifice is hidden, the reward is preserved. Publicizing obedience often transfers the reward from heaven to human praise. Chosen ones understand that applause fades, but God's reward endures. They are content knowing that God sees every tear, every denial, and every quiet yes. Sacrifice also forms intimacy with God. These moments create private encounters where faith is strengthened and identity is refined. When you constantly share these moments, it can break the sacredness of that intimacy. Some experiences are meant to remain between you and God, strengthening the bond that prepares you for greater responsibility and deeper trust. Another reason to guard your acts of obedience is spiritual warfare. Sacrifice signals growth, and growth attracts resistance. When obedience is announced, it can draw unnecessary spiritual opposition before the fruit has time to mature. God often hides his servants during seasons of deep surrender, so they can be strengthened before being seen. Obedience also humbles the heart when it goes unseen. It trains you to value God's approval above all else. This humility is essential for anyone God intends to elevate. Those who cannot obey without recognition often struggle to handle visibility without corruption. Hidden obedience prepares you to remain grounded when public responsibility comes. Over time, sacrifice produces fruit that speaks for itself. Change, character, spiritual authority, peace, and divine favor begin to emerge naturally. When people see the outcome, explanations become unnecessary. God allows the results of obedience to testify louder than stories ever could. There will come a season when God permits your sacrifices to be shared, not to glorify you, but to strengthen others. By then, the pain has healed, the lesson is complete, and the testimony points clearly to God's faithfulness. Timing transforms sacrifice into testimony without exposing wounds prematurely. Until that appointed time, wisdom calls you to obey quietly and trust deeply. Every unseen sacrifice is recorded in heaven. Every hidden act of obedience is building something eternal. When God chooses to reveal what you surrendered in secret, it will be clear that it was never wasted, and that He Himself has been your reward all along.